Welcome to Moment and Talk. I'm your host, Shiso Moa. On episode 18, we have Calvin from Dictumdose. You probably see him mainly on Facebook and YouTube, but guess what? He just launched a website. You can check him out at www.dictumdose.com. Today's episode, we chat about how he came about and why he was so curious to learn a lot of these proverbs. He does such a great job explaining the proverbs. I'm just learning as we were listening to these episodes. I've seen a lot of the YouTube videos he made. And even better, we officially met this weekend during St. Paul New Year. And he's a great guy. Well, I'm excited for this episode. But first, let's thank our sponsors and let's get right back into it. Today's sponsor is brought to you by Shiso's Menswear. Are you looking for the latest trendy men's fashion? Look no further. Shiso's Menswear carries handcrafted bow ties, suit accessories, and everyday streetwear. They are your one-stop Mo-inspired men's shop. You can search them online at www.xixomenswear.com. Now let's get back to the show. I am super excited today. Listeners, we have a gentleman. You probably heard and may see him quite often on Facebook and on YouTube. His proverbs that he gives out is just so much understanding. If you don't know who this gentleman is, it's Calvin, a Dictumdose, and he's on the other side of the line. What's going on, man? How's your day?
Not too bad, man. Just getting the day started here, bright and early.
It's bright and early. It is Monday, and we are just getting started with our day too. Let's tell us, the audience and the listener, something that we don't know about you.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of confusion that people get is that I guess right now, in the context of the listeners and the followers, they think that I live in California. So I guess I want to make that clear that I actually live in Minnesota. For a lot of people who are always asking, hey, so are you in California? The answer is no. I'm actually here in Minnesota.
Why do they ask that? Do they want to meet up or something?
I don't know. I was kind of confused because I haven't really solved or had the right answer as to why people are thinking that. I don't know if it's because I'm originally from California and I guess my profile indicates something that I used to live in California or something, but people are always like, what? When they see me in person, they're like, you live here? I'm like, yeah, I do live here in Minnesota. So I guess something that people don't know is I guess I live in Minnesota, not in California.
Heck, I'd be surprised. Have I run into you before?
I don't know. Maybe at gatherings.
I might have from far away. I think I did see you a while back, but didn't have the chance to say hello from another side.
Yeah.
Some people might be fangirling if they see you. Like, oh, that's Calvin. The little fangirl in me, like, oh, that's Calvin. Teach me something. So when dig back, you have kids, right?
I do. I got 4 little ones.
4 little ones, and married for a couple years now.
My wife and I, we've been married since 2007, so we're going on 12 and counting.
Oh man, that's amazing, dude.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
How you came about that? Could you give us the backstory of how that came about, and where'd you get it from?
Yeah, so I guess growing up, these are languages and these are proverbs and sayings that I've always heard as a kid. And it never really occurred to me that these sayings have, deeper meanings and different types of implications. And I guess for me, it didn't occur to me until I was in school, in my doctoral program, actually. We were talking about therapy. Well, first of all, I'm a psychologist in training. And so we were in therapy class. We were talking about how we can integrate cultural considerations into the therapy room. And one of the things that I talked about was how the use of interpreters is very important. And then also the competency of the interpreter is also very important in terms of translating. And so for a person to translate what a Hmong person's saying, they can translate what and convey their messages according to what they're saying. So they can do like a literal translation, or they can take the proverb and translate that based on its meaning. And so I was thinking about the interpreter standpoint, like if they were just translating exactly what the person is saying, they're not really getting the message because it's a literal translation. And so that would fall into the crack, and then there would be no understanding between the therapist and also the client. So I thought about to myself, wow, this is something that I also have to learn for myself. So that if I'm ever engaging in any type of therapy in the room, and seated across from me is an older gentleman or older woman among women who was using these proverbs, and if I'm not understanding that, then I'm not really understanding what they're saying, and I might take their literal translation, and I might just completely miss the point. And so I thought about, what about like our generations right now? Our generation where we're starting to slowly lose the language, and some of us don't even understand these proverbs anymore. And perhaps that could be a reason why there's a lot of miscommunication with our parents and a lot of conflicts that come about. And so I thought, why don't I just make a video about this? Because I've learned one that's important to me. And I'll start off with this one, and then I'll continually, make more videos about these things. So then after class, I went straight to my car. I sat in my car, and I had my phone with me. So I took on my phone, I hit record, and I started talking in my car. I just shared the first proverb, and that was, "有重无路, 有灵无去路." You take a step, and you can take a step back. But if you misspeak, you cannot retrieve those words back. And so I shared that one. That was my very first video. And shortly after that, my brother was like, "Hey, you got to make this public and so that we can share it." And so I made it public, and he shared it, and then everybody else started sharing it. And that was the birth of the Dictumdose page. Um, I don't I don't think it really occurred to me how important it was until like maybe the second or third video, because I thought it was a fluke the first time. And I make a second video, same thing. It took off again. Third time, took off again. And so that really spoke to me that this is something important, something valuable that a lot of people are also wanting to understand more, wanting to know more about this, because these words, these sayings is a very strong cultural identity for a lot of us.
I didn't catch on to a lot of the recent one, and I caught on to it because again, the proverbs, and I personally don't understand them at all.
Hmm.
Heck, I can't even speak it. How could I understand it, right?
Yeah.
I could talk simple Hmong, and I could speak it. I could hear what you're saying, but I just don't understand any of these old school saying at all. But with your guidance and help, I sure would learn a lot, and I'm pretty sure a lot of your listeners are learning as well as you're making more and more video. And I'm pretty sure everyone really appreciate it, including myself.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm assuming with that first 2 3 video, your phone was just lit it with notifications and just thinking like, wait a minute, this is not a fluke. I mean, this is probably needed. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah. So, like I mentioned, as soon as I switched it to public, I was driving home, and my phone was just blowing up in my pocket. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Is this an emergency? And so I'm like, all right, maybe it's just, my family, because we have a group text, and I'm like, maybe it's just people texting back and forth. And I'm driving home, and as I'm driving, it just keeps going off, and all these notifications going off on my phone. And so I get home, and I take my phone out to see what's going on, and I check my phone, and lo and behold, like Facebook has been just blowing up. All the notifications, the comments that were coming in, they were just coming and pouring. And I was just kind of confused, like, what is this? That was my first experience with anything like that. And I had no idea what was happening.
What were some of the comments you got in there?
People were saying, "Hey, this is what we're talking about," or some people would say things like, "Oh man, thank you so much for clarifying this. I've been meaning to learn more about this." And the reactions that come in. Some people might even ask questions about like, "Hey, so how do you apply this?" And what does this mean in this particular context? And then people are just tagging other people too, like, "Hey, remember a grandpa used to say this? This is what it means." So a lot of people were like, they're relating to it. They were seeing that this is something that they've also experienced before, but they never really understood what it meant.
Um, I wanted to also say that with a lot of your proverbs, did you get that from your uncle, your daddy, your grandpa? Where'd you start learning all this stuff from?
Yeah, most of it I would say have been from my parents. I think both my parents equally. Each time there's a moment that they're able to, in any teachable moment, they would use it. And so, my mom would just catch me on the side sometimes, like something would happen and some event occurred. She'll catch me. She'll say, "Hey, come here. Let me tell you something." She'll say, "See what just happened there? My dad used to teach me this. He used to say this." And so, like that proverb that I just shared, 有种无路有人无去路. Somebody might say something wrong, and she'll say, "My grandpa used to teach me this, that you should be very careful by the words that you use, because those words, they have consequences, either for you, or they have consequences and they may hurt other people too in the event that you use those words." And so she'll say things like that to me, and I'll go like, "Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, I hear ya," but not really understanding what it meant. I'll just hear it, and then I'll go on with my day, and that was it. So moments like that, they'll use that. My dad would also pull me aside. He'll say things, or even like during family meetings, my dad will say those things, and I'm just like, "Okay, I don't get it, but let's continue on." Not really
Do
understanding it.
do I honestly feel like when someone says a proverb like that, it's like a riddle to me.
Yeah, it really is.
It's I can't even I can't understand the old saying. You want me to figure this riddle out? Like I don't get it. Just spit it out, and just say it. What it
Yeah,
means.
exactly. That's
uh,
that's basically what it is. I mean, it's almost like a riddle, and unless you really are immersed in it and have a great understanding and some of the contextual factors behind it, you won't get it.
to me, it sounds. I'd say it's like a riddle. It could be used in good and bad too. I don't know, but I feel like it's more of a bad of a riddle because it's kind of like what's I guess maybe a hypocrite riddle
Uh-huh.
or in that kind of nature. That's how I feel when they
Mm,
give they. It's like it's just that wording, the way they say it. It's just like a riddle for me to figure out, and that riddle is it's for me to think about.
yeah, yeah.
But I don't get it. So I was like, I just shrug it off. Like, okay, sure, nod my head, yeah, yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So your mom teaches you, your dad teaches you, you probably heard this from your grandpa, even.
Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to meet either of my grandpas, uh, both maternal or paternal. My paternal grandfather passed away when my father was actually very young. Same thing with my maternal grandmother. My father actually grew up as an orphan. He's the only one in his family, no siblings. Um, but both his parents passed away at a very young age. Same thing with my mom. I didn't get the chance to meet my grandfather, but I got a chance to meet my grandmother, but she did pass away when I was really young. I don't remember. I was probably like 5 years old, maybe, when she passed away. So I have a very faint memory of my grandmother, and that's about it. But most of it has been through, learning from my mom, my dad, and then just really being intentional about listening. My parents are always like, you go and you listen, you sit down and you listen to the elders talk. If you ever go to like funerals, she always say, if you go to the funerals, don't go and sit at the tables and play cards or drink alcohol and laugh and make a obnoxious scene, but rather go sit with the elders who are talking and listen and be very purposeful in your attention, and to be intentional about listening to what they're saying, because you may pick up a few things that you can use and apply to your life. And so after hearing those things, it took many years, because the table is always fun. You go and you sit down, you play cards with friends, and it's fun. But after a while, as you mature and as I matured and got older, I thought, maybe my mom is right. Maybe I should do that. I should go listen. And so I sit around with the elders and I listen to them and I conversate with them and I talk with them. And she's been right this whole time. You want something valuable, you want wisdom, you sit around with these folks. They share a lot of their experiences, their lived experiences. And whether good or bad, you pick up a few things here and there. She's always saying there's not going to be good things all the time. But when you hear the good things, take those things and apply it to your life, because those are free wisdom for you. You don't have to go searching very far.
To since you brought that up with wisdom, since today is I call it Monday motivation. Can you give us a proverb, a very inspiring Monday motivation proverb?
Yeah. I really like the one that I think this is probably like my second video that I shared. And this is one that's really gotten me to keep moving in life. And that is lo chang jinju lo chang tang yu le ot le no yang.
Say
And
that one more time,
I'll say one more
a
time.
little bit slower.
All right. It says lo chang jinju lo chang tang yu le ot le no yang. So lo chang jinju lo chang means if they're jumping around and being busy, you're not doing that. Lo chang tang means they're done now, they're done being busy, they're done jumping around. You le ot le no yang. Now you basically become this dog that just kind of looks around. Like you're looking around, wondering why people have suddenly stopped jumping around. And this proverb, the meaning is that when people are busy, when people are going out and doing things, let's say, for example, education, people are going to colleges, people are going and pursuing higher education, they're staying busy, but you don't do that. You just kind of observe. And then when they stop being busy, that means that now they've graduated, they've obtained degrees, professional degrees, whatever that may be. Now that they've stopped being busy because they've obtained their goal, you have not done anything in your life. Now you're basically this dog that just kind of walks around. You pause and you look like, wow, like that person's a doctor. Oh, that person's a nurse. Oh, that person has a degree or even business. Oh, that person started a very um, profitable business. And now you are nowhere. You weren't jumping and moving around when they were moving, and so now you're still this in the same position as you were before. 5 years later, people are off and venturing off into different areas and different new adventures in life. Yet you are still the same old person, and then like a dog, you're just kind of wondering, like, oh man, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I also jump and go to school? Why didn't I also start off on a business venture? And so this one here I really like because it encourages people to not be complacent, but to continue to strive for excellence, to continue to push and move forward in life and don't be stagnant.
I love it. I love it. That is amazing Monday motivational quote.
Mm.
I love
Yeah.
that. So for the listeners out there, it's a great motivation. Like for those who are stuck somewhere, or not even stuck, or don't even know what they're doing. Right? You're just going a 9 to 5 job, and yeah, great. It gets you by. It's good. But what if there's more out there, right? And like
Yeah.
you said, there's someone becoming a doctor, someone becoming a business owner, so forth and so on. But you're just a dog wagging its tail, not sure where to go, with their life.
hmm It's also important too that, when you see people are busy and you want to be busy, some people may not have the direction in life. They may not know what their passion is right away. But I think just because you don't know that doesn't mean you sit still, but you can always explore and ask around, follow, have conversations with people, seek for help, ask questions. Don't just sit around and expect things to come to you because, the truth is that things don't just fall in your laps. Some people are very fortunate and blessed with that luck, but not everybody is.
Hmm. With your last video, it was a video about funerals,
Yeah. hmm
and I personally have not even. I don't even know the words to say, to be honest. I am a very grown man,
Yeah.
and to be honest, I have to listen to my own very own podcast and to listen to it, or listen to your video, and just drive here and just listen to it over and over and over and over, to just get the wordings right. Because again, when I go to funerals, I don't even know the saying, and I feel, I would say, behind on that part.
Mhm.
But how do you balance that, even, your
That's
cultural and your religious, and even your career, even, like, how do you even balance that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about just being very intentional. And I think growing up, I didn't learn all these things, and in the video I shared about my experience being a young boy, even a young adult, and not knowing how to say these things. And so being placed in a position where you have to thank people for coming or people for giving ya chandu, I always felt really ashamed, like, man, like, how come I don't know how to say this? And, this is my role, but I can't even fulfill this small little role. And feeling ashamed and feeling like kind of helpless. Like it made me feel like I didn't want to do it anymore. Like I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I hate this. I hate this culture. I hate being Hmong. I hate that we have to do all this stuff. But I think that stems from just that shame piece. Like I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel really shameful that I am this adult now, and I still can't even do it. But then again, it goes back to a lot of the problems that I shared before too, and it's like you can't just use that one excuse and feel bad for yourself, because I think everybody has that willpower to be able to go and learn and be very intentional about it, because anything that we want to do in life, if we are very intentional about it, whether it's a passion or not, we will make it happen. We'll find ways to make it happen. And I think for me, wanting to learn this, I was very intentional about learning it. I was very intentional about asking people to teach me, especially my father. Sitting down with my dad, having him recite it to me. I'll write it down. I'll recite it back to him. I would practice with him. And the more that I did that with him, and the more I practiced it, the more I used it, the more I got more comfortable with it. And then when the time comes and I'm at a funeral, it was very difficult to do because, as we all know, as Hmong people, when you go and you do it at a funeral, when you're reciting, it's not just you reciting. You're reciting and they're also responding at the same time. And there's a lot of commotion happening, and you can get lost in your words. And so to be really, I practice it's so much that I've basically got it down. It doesn't matter how much noise, how loud the commotion is. Like I know my words and I know what I'm saying. And so it took a lot of intentional acts. It took a lot of purpose in making sure that I really learned it and really are able to recite it. And then also to understand like the meaning. I think sometimes we can say these things, but if you don't understand the meaning, it's almost as though you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. You're not really thanking the person genuinely. And so that's also another important piece that I want to understand more, was talking to my father to understand what these words mean. What are some of these different sayings, and what message are we conveying to the person when we say it?
Can you, with that last video, can you recite that for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is when somebody comes and they'll give you nya chandu, and you would take the person and you'll thank them. You would say, "What's your name, ma?" Or you would say, "What's your name, ma?" Bitch, có chỉ trả lệ có chỗ sản ninh sản trắng sản rốt sản dễ có chính tổng sinh tổng lý nhà sản đào tô ban bê chế sở chỗ ta kiến nên kia trắng giờ là bố ta từng kết sơ lô ta lửa nu bê chế sở chỗ chơi ổn nên kế bê yon dù có tự cha từng gì chỉ chơi ổn nên kế chỗ lên mô có tự cha từng gì cho môn dù giống dù chúa ôn nàng cháu nàng cha ya một sơ nơi mó ô cháu nữa. And then you would bow. Person stands up. You acknowledge him one time and say, "Wachonya chandu ma," and then the person be on their way.
I'm gonna definitely listen to this a couple more times. I'm taking notes as you were saying that, and I have to listen a couple more times. So, just to rephrase, what's happening is, this is a saying when you're at a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
You're either from deceased side or not, but just coming into the funeral, and you're giving away donations into helping the family,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever they want to use the expense for.
Right.
And this is, so just again, just to rephrase, and for our listeners, we're taking them a picture, right, of where they're at. So again, I'm still learning this a lot as I go to. Now, you mentioned your dad 3-4 times in his audio already.
Mm-hmm.
Did you and your dad get a lot closer in bonding for what you've been learning back and forth? Because he's been teaching, you've been listening.
Mm-hmm.
Your bond got a lot closer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think since I've embarked on this journey here, my dad and I have been talking a lot more, and we've been spending a lot more time face to face and just really talking about these things. And what really strengthened our bond that I've noticed is that we aren't just talking and having conversations about the Banlu itself, but as he's teaching me, I'm also hearing through his voice the way that he learned and what his life experience was. As I mentioned earlier, my dad, he's an orphan. He grew up, his parents died when he was very young. I'll share a quick story about my dad here.
Yes, yes, yes.
So my dad, his father passed away of illness. And one story that I heard from my aunt too about my father that made me really, really sad was that when my father was a young little boy, almost like a little toddler, his mom actually died after birth complications. And so while she was having complications and she passed away, he, as a little toddler baby, didn't even know that his mom had passed away. And so while she laid there, um, he still crawled and to go breastfeed, even though his mom had passed away. And so a little boy like that didn't even know that his mom had already died, still went and breastfed. And to me, that was very, very sad to hear that story about my father. And then to hear about him growing up without anybody, no siblings at all, mostly just his cousins. And for my dad to learn all of these things by himself through kind of just like what I said earlier, was just observation, being very intentional about learning. There's no one to teach him. He didn't have his father to teach him. And so for him to learn, he had to really go and really be intentional about it, listening to people, sitting down while people recite these things. And there's no way that he was able to write it down. I mean, he had to have just listen and really memorize these words. And so when he's teaching me, I'm also hearing that through him. And to me, it just shows me how much my father has been through his live experiences to be able to be who he is today. And so that really makes me really appreciate my father a lot. Um, and then also for us to be able to talk about this, I learned more about him, how he did it. And for him to be able to share it with me is it's really a blessing, to be able to still have the opportunity to share this time with him and to learn from him. And just to see how knowledgeable and how wise my father is, despite his experiences. I think that also gave him an edge where he was able to really be self-aware of who he is, where he is, and how he was able to navigate life on his own.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's wow, it's a very sentimental story about your dad.
Hmm.
With your dad, and now you are a dad of four. You have sons too. Are they
Hmm.
curious to learn? Are they interested to learn?
My kids, no.
Absolutely zero. Wow, this is turning to a 360 now.
It is, and it's funny. My oldest daughter, though, my oldest child, she's very curious and she's very um, curious and just wanting to know more about the culture and knowing more about who she is as a Hmong person. But my sons, both my sons, they're not as interested. Like they know who we are as Hmong people, but they're not as interested. And that's a hard juggle because when we grow up in a society like this, where their exposure to the American culture is much more than the Hmong culture itself, or just being who you are as a Hmong person. That overpowers a lot of the cultural things that we do as Hmong people. And so they're very highly acculturated, but not as enculturated. And I think the enculturation part comes from us as parents. And I think myself, I haven't been doing a very good job of that, particularly because I myself struggled with it for a very long time. And so as I'm teaching them, I'm also learning ways of how to teach them so that they can also understand. So I think this is a start to us really being intentional about teaching our kids about the Hmong people, who we are, what are some things we do within the culture and why these things happen, how to address different people in the family, your aunts, your uncles, from your mom's side, your dad's side, and why do we do these different things? Really teaching them so they understand it too, and also understand the language too. I think that's a big part because we often resort to English. It's a lot easier to communicate, and we forget that through that we are losing the language, and we're not really teaching our kids how to continue to speak well.
Great way to look at it. I pretty sure sooner or later they'll come to love their culture and especially the language, just like you did.
Hmm.
As myself growing up, I'm still learning a lot. I've always loved and respect the culture. Um, I could speak it. I could hear exactly what you're saying. But one thing I can't do is I can't read it.
Hmm.
So something that I'm learning too. It's funny how this sounds, but I've been learning on YouTube, just watching, just watching on YouTube, like you, for example, or I'm karaokeing to a song. That's how I learned. Like I'm listening to my boots, and stuff I'm singing as I'm reading it, at the same time. Like, so that's what that word means.
Yeah.
So. So people ask you, how did you learn how to read Hmong? Oh, it's like Mabu or like something like something like that, Shut and Rush or whatever it is.
But that's cool though. That's the way that we learn. I think it doesn't matter the way or the different styles or how we learn, but the fact that you're being intentional about learning. You can karaoke and practice it. That's your way of learning. Some people prefer to read it. That's their way of learning, or they prefer to be in a class and being taught. And so whatever method you use to learn, I think it's the idea that you're actually being intentional about learning is what matters.
I like learning in a fun way. It seems like I can sit there. I can sit there in a class. You know what? I every time I've listened to your proverbs, I've always been like driving.
Hmm.
You know, um, so that's how I learned. It's here and there where I sit down and listen, but somehow it's just I feel like the time for me is usually when I'm like driving in the car. I'm just by myself. That's where I really think it just close my mind off to everything, but just stay really in tune to what you have to say to me,
Hmm.
and then recite what you just said. With the with Now that you learn so many proverbs, wow, you probably have how many videos now?
I don't even know. I think maybe like 60, 70 videos, maybe.
Wow, and more to come, right?
Oh yeah,
A
yeah,
whole lot more. Just give you some ideas, man. I definitely want to see an app, dude.
yeah,
Learn
yeah.
a learning app for that. Oh, hey, for the listeners, check. We are super excited to let you guys know that Calvin here is launching a website too.
Yes, I am.
So he has his YouTube already. His website's it's in the works as we speak. We don't have no ETA yet, but should be all finalized by end of the year.
Yeah,
On
yeah.
on full
Hopefully
blown.
before then.
Any other channels besides YouTube and your own website and Facebook, obviously?
Yeah, the biggest following is on Facebook. I also have a YouTube for folks who don't have Facebook or choose not to engage in Facebook. That way, I have two platforms for people to always have the ability to access it. But then also, like you mentioned, the website will be coming very soon. And so, people who don't have YouTube or doesn't have Facebook, they can also access it on the website.
Yeah, really, really love your content, and all of your video content will be feed on our website, our Moment website as well too. Cause I just love what you're doing. It's a lot of learning, a lot of very informational that you're giving out for us, and so much value that we can't appreciate you enough. Because I have not seen anything like this. A lot of the saying and these proverbs are really hidden to themselves for the older generation. Like you said, if you really want to learn, like your mom said, if you really want to learn, you go not sit with the guys who are drinking beer, not guys who are playing guard, but really with the elder. And
Hmm.
that's how you really learn. But thanks to the channel and medium that you created, I could just flip on YouTube or go to your website or go to your Facebook and just, click on play and then listen to it to really learn how to say these proverbs, learn them for myself and teach others as well. So we can't thank you enough for that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
One lastly, wanted to say and ask you was, let's talk more about your like your I mean, how do I say this? Applying this, and when did you start applying it? You know, because you started to learn it because you were curious about it, but now you're really applying it.
Hmm.
I mean, so besides funerals, is there any where you apply this?
Yeah, these proverbs that I share about, like how my mom's always like, she'll take the moment to teach me this event right here. My grandpa used to say this to me, and she'll use a proverb, or my dad would say in a meeting that this is what happened, and then he would use a proverb. And I think not just hearing it and understanding it in the context of how they're explaining it, but really being intentional about applying it into my life. So just like the banglu that I just shared earlier about your chungulu, your lunggujilu, you take a step that's in the wrong direction, you retrieve that step, you misspeak, and you cannot take those words back. And I think that everyone can apply immediately. Once you understand the meaning of that proverb, you can apply that immediately. And that is, be very cognizant and careful of the things that you say, because words, there's a saying too in English that says that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. I think that's true, but that's also not true, because words, they do hurt a lot of people. And words, once it leaves your mouth and you say something, the person on the receiving end, they're not going to forget it. They may be able to forgive you for the hurtful things you have said, but for them to forget it, that's not going to happen. And you, the person who has said it, you simply cannot just say words come back and you take those words back and it's completely gone. No, it's not like taking your foot back because you've gone in the wrong direction. You cannot retrieve those words no more. Once you said it, it's there, and the person who heard it, it's out there. And so to be very cognizant and careful about how we speak, the things that we say, because the words, they carry weight. They have consequences, like I said earlier. So that's one way to apply immediately.
Awesome. Well, this is we're gonna wrap things up. Would you like to give us any advice, last parting words for our listeners, Kevin?
Yeah, I do. I was having a conversation the other day with some folks, and we were talking about, even just like what you and I were talking about, my sons growing up here too, and whether or not they're interested in learning more about the Hmong culture or the proverbs or the language. And I would say that I think a lot of us can identify with this too, and that is, as young little kids, we're, for lack of better words, we're colorblind. We're innocent and we play, and we don't see differences in race and ethnicity. But as we grow older, and we develop, especially like in the middle school range, you start searching for your identity and who you are as a person, and wanting to know more about who I am, because you start realizing that there are differences amongst us. There's differences in race, in nationality, the color of our skin. We're all different. And how do we identify? And I think a lot of individuals, they get lost in that moment. And so for the listeners, and including myself too, is being very intentional about teaching our kids about who we are as Hmong people, so that they can grasp that identity early. And when they reach that point, they know who they are. And how can we do this? I think exposures to different kinds of Hmong literature is important. Reading Hmong books. I've seen a lot of children's book that's coming out. It's teaching kids how to read in Hmong. Seeing representation in the media, or even just going to Hmong New Year's. I think that's another part that's very important. I think that the Hmong people, we celebrate the New Year for a reason, and for our kids to be able to be exposed to that, to understand why the Hmong New Year exists and the reasons behind it, for them to see Hmong people and to know that as a Hmong person, this is what the Hmong history looks like. This is what we've always done. And so teaching our kids at a young age so that they know who they are will only benefit them when they reach that point where they're not going to be confused anymore. And they know they have a stronger understanding and grounding of who they are as a Hmong person.
Mm, you are absolutely right. And as we both age, would love either to love our culture or teach them while they're young. and they can always grasp into it. And it's their choice to appreciate it or don't appreciate it. It's really up to them.
Exactly.
But at least they're open and exposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
The Hmong New Year is, well, by the time this episode's out, it will be technically be done with it already. But I will be for sure be there, and I hope to run into you and talk to you in person, Calvin.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, we're really appreciative of your time. We want to wrap things up. Enjoy your week, man.
Yeah.
You know what they say back when we started? You wish you're gonna be early. You wish you're gonna be in California. Because I heard tomorrow we're gonna get pounded. Tuesday with like 6 or some 8 inches of snow.
Yep. I wouldn't mind being in California right now.
Right.
That ends our episode. If you haven't yet, visit our official website at www.hmongmentalk.com or like and share us on Facebook at Hmong Men Talk.
Who also believes in building family values. She believes not only in investing in your future, but also investing in your present moment, creating time and memories with your family. If you have any insurance needs or any questions, please don't hesitate to call her at the link below.
Also, a special thanks to DJ Peter for using his beats. You can check him out at YouTube.